Welcome back to Sipa's Swimmer Garage. Winter has finally come to Finland, and that means that it's time to start working on the winter beater. Earlier, the X5 was my winter beater, but it has been now promoted to the #1 daily driver in our family. Which means that this E61 is my winter beater now. And this is actually quite beater. At least it was. Maybe it still is, even though I'm filming this intro after everything I have done for the car. In any case, we will start to work on this E61 now. The biggest problem in this was that the automatic transmission, the 6 HP, the turbine started slipping really badly on that. This was still drivable, but it was horrible to drive, because the turbine was slipping so badly and the mileage was very poor. So we are going to fix that and million other problems in this. I don't know if I will put those fixes in this video, because those are just boring basic stuff. But that 6 HP transmission, I calculated that it would cost like 2,000 euros as minimum to fix that. And you need to remember that the 6 HP is quite crap transmission to start with. And it's not guaranteed that transmission will work after all those fixes, because it has been driven almost 500,000 kilometers now. So I don't want to put as much money on that as the car is worth, because these E61s aren't really worth anything these days. All the young people just drive these around the city and ruin these. I could of course put 8 HP on this, which would be easy swap, and I have already done 3 of those. If you haven't seen those videos, you find them here. But I was thinking that manual swapping this would be the best idea, because I can do that for really cheap, and I will show you how to do that too. So we will manual swap this E61 and fix some faults in this. And that will be the winter beater video this time. So yeah, let's stop the talk and start to work on this. I'll explain everything as we go. I have no idea where the proper charger is. But this will do. Second try. Yep. Oh, one thing. One other serious problem in this has been the driveshaft that sometimes feels like it will come through the tunnel. So we'll need to figure out what's wrong with it.
Löytyisikö 10 milliä? Okay, this is first for me. I think the mice or something has been hiding seeds in here, so yeah. I think this could have been even catch fire or smoke or something, because it's not good to have this kind of really dry seeds on top of the exhaust, but yeah. Let's see if we have more there. I have the drive shaft visible now, and I don't see anything immediately wrong. Well, this is sagging quite a bit. I don't know if you can see, but there's a lot of room on the top and not much on the bottom, so this probably needs to be around there, but it has been sinking maybe like half a centimeter, so yeah, that's not good. Everything here seems solid, and there. And this kuibo, this doesn't seem to be too bad. There's a little bit of crack there, but that's not bad. So I don't know. Okay, let's correct that. I had the transmission and the parking brake somehow jammed so that this could rotate. So now when those are free, you can see that the U-joint here, it has quite a bit of play. There's like, I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but there's like huge amount of play on the U-joint. So, but yeah, that U-joint is broken and that's why the driveshaft is making huge racket here. Damn it, I just realized that I need to remove the converter bolts now, and it's really horrible job to do with the M54 exhaust, but yeah, there's no other choice.
6.5 hours later.
This connector leaking is quite usual problem spot for the 6 HPs, but yeah, I don't really care.
I seem to have some sort of audio problems with the microphone at this point, so you just need to listen to me talking. But anyways, you know the drill at this point. Get all the extensions you have and open the top side transmission bolts. After that, you can lower down the transmission.
Transmission is now off. I'm thinking that the shifter will be probably mounted somewhere here. Yeah, there's a point for that. I need to install the dropper there. Remove this cable shifter, and I think the clutch line comes here or goes here. I need. But anyways, I think that's for the clutch line. I should have that in some of the packages that I have, and I just push it in there.
Then the only thing left is the 2-part flex plate or flywheel or whatever you want to call these things. But anyways, these aren't needed anymore, so I can throw these away. But now that those aren't in the way anymore, I can tell you what we will replace all that. Originally these E60 cars with the M54 have been all with GS6 37-digit manual transmission, if the car is manual. So that would be easy swap to this if I would take all the parts from that kind of car, because everything would be bolt on. But even those M54 GS6 37-digit transmission alone are like €600 transmissions on the open markets here. And those are wanted stuff to do 6-bit swaps, so there isn't much availability in those. And also there hasn't been even that many M54 manual E60 cars. But there is a lot of basic 520D manual cars, and there's a lot of wrecker parts available for those. And for cheap price. So I will do this manual swap using the parts from the diesels. I think all of those small diesels in 3 and 5 series came with the CS6 37-digit transmission, which is almost the same as the digit gasoline variant, only that the first few gears are shorter and then the transmission angle is slightly different. But I personally like those first gears being shorter and the wrong angle is easy to handle. So I bought the cheapest 37-digit transmission that I found. These M5X bolt-on 37-digit transmissions can be found at least on E90s and E60s with the M47 engine. But mine came from facelift E46 with M47, only because this was the cheapest one available, priced at €80. The flywheel and clutch for this swap could come directly from any M54 car with 6-speed manual, but I happen to have a lot of clutches and flywheels in my garage, so I'll try to use some of those parts and fit those using clutch disc that fits this transmission, just to save on money.
I did now slightly resurface this flywheel that I have. This is the dual mass flywheel from some M50, I'm not 100% sure what. Anyways, these are almost the same, every one of these. But this is really solid one. There's no free play or anything in this, so this should work fine. But I just noticed that because I have the 37-digit, I have this clutch disc for those, and this is for the N47, because you can get this cheaply from the FMIC, but this says gearbox side on that side, and yeah, it's hitting the bolts there. The clutch disc that is meant to use it with that flywheel, it looks like this, but this has this really thick one hitting the bolts there. But I think that because this is quite symmetrical, well, it's a little bit poking out that way. But if I flip this over, there is this weird thing, like this is like dual, almost like dual mass clutch disc, and this moves like this, and like this is meant to dampen some of the rattles on the transmission. But if I look, it might be that if I remove this one, I can then fit this with that flywheel without hitting a bolt. So let's try to remove this. I think this is like just stamped there. This is like thin sheet of metal and this is plastic here. So yeah, this should work just fine without this and so on. So let's try that.
And my audio problems continue, so you need to imagine a angle grinder noises here. But yeah, that moving thing came off easily. And if you are wondering why this clutch disc, it's because it was the cheapest one I could find that fits this transmission.
Okay, that escalated a little bit. I removed this one and then there's plenty of room for the bolts here. But then when you flip this over, these rivets here, these will hit the flywheel, at least this one that I have. So I needed to lay it a little bit away from here. So now this fits nicely here and only hits the actual friction surface, not any metal here. So I think this should be now ready for install. And then of course, because this was automatic, we need the pilot bearing for the transmission. And this is that one. But of course, because we have the 37 digit, we need the pilot bearing in the flywheel. So that's why I have this spacer here that brings up the pilot bearing enough out from the crank. So we don't need the newer model flywheel.
Damn it, is everything without sound? Well, let's hammer in the bearing to the spacer and then we can hammer the spacer to the crank. This spacer doesn't require any Loctite because it's friction fit. After that we can install the flywheel. These bolts have been reused for like 10 times now, so I don't recommend doing that way if you have some kind of powerful engine or anything. But for stock engine I think this is fine. Then follows the clutch disc, wrong way as I said earlier. And then lastly, the pressure assembly. I think this is from E36328i and not the correct one for this flywheel, so it needs some simming. Quite mix and match setup, but this cost less than €100 for me.
Okay, let's now work with this transmission before we put this in. It's now nice and clean, but let's drain out the old oil if there's any and then put new fresh oil in.
I don't understand why the sound works sometimes. Well, I'm putting comma oil to the transmission that is one of the few that are actually spec'd for MTF LT2 that these transmissions take. And on my experience, this works great. Even though this costs only third what the real MTF LT costs at the dealer. And the shifter part, this is of course the E46 shifter, and this is also really clapped out. There's a lot of play in this. So I bought the E60 shifter parts, these ones here. The new ones are nowadays super expensive, so I didn't want to get those. So yeah, this should be so too. These are for the 520D, the facelift one, but they still use the same transmission, so this should fit here. I'm not sure which way this will go. Yeah, I think it is this way. And anyways, if these don't fit correctly, I anyways need to cut and weld these in the angle, because this transmission will be in angle in the car. So yeah, let's swap that out.
Okay, that pressure bearing or whatever that is, you can put that in two ways, in these transmissions, or well, not in these transmissions, but anyways in these newer ones. And I did leave that how it was, but now when I check the movement, there's like huge amount of free movement here. You need to have little bit, but I think this is too much, so I will flip that other way around and see if it works better like that. So this here, it was like this. You can see how low those are. So I can flip this like this, and those are much taller ones, so I think that should be the correct one now. And let's try. Okay, now there is way less movement, so I think this was the correct thing to do. Okay, here's now the situation with the clutch slave cylinders. So this was the E46 one that was on the transmission, and this is the E46 line. That of course doesn't fit with the E60, or well, you could make that fit, but anyways, I got the E61, but this doesn't seem to be fitting here at all. So I got another one. So this is from the another 37-digit transmission. I think this is from the E90. So even still not same as the E60, but this looks pretty much the same. So if we look like this, so yeah, this now lines up with this. There's of course this clutch delay line here, but I will just remove this delay line, put on this clutch line, and I think we will use this slave cylinder. It got a little bit too excited, but yeah. This hard line seems to be a little bit mangled. I don't know if that even fits. And I think this needs to go from inside out, so let's remove this one. Oh shit. Now it's time for all the custom stuff. So as you can see, this is now a little bit in an angle. So I need to make this rear bracket that is in the angle, and I also need to modify this shifter linkage so that it fits when the transmission is in this angle. But let's start with this. I need to figure out what to do with that then. Okay, looking at this situation, this seems to go way too far back. It gets difficult to make those mounts, and of course nothing fits here. This is huge, so I think I will just put this back on like this, and I will just bend bracket from this bolt to this bolt, and I think that's our transmission mount. Yeah, I will do that the easiest way, like that. I of course just need to align this so that the drive shaft is straight, and then I can do the mount. Screws, I think. Okay, the transmission brace is now ready and bolted there. It seems really solid and so on, so that's enough. If we check the alignment of the drive shaft, it's maybe millimeter too low here. So yeah, that's like half millimeter there. I don't know. Should I put maybe small spacer there or not? I think that's fine. So yeah, now we can remove this drive shaft and continue with this shifter mechanism here. Se on väärinpäin. It's always nice to find out that you are out of welding gas, like you can see there. But I did put some bolts through that, so I hope that's okay. This looks weird, but that's because the transmission is in angle and it little bit moves the mounting point towards the side. I'm not 100% happy for this, but this seems really solid and I think this is okay. So yeah, let's move to another things. These are manual pedals that I bought for this. These came from 520D manual, so the really basic one, but these are of course all the same. One scary thing is that this wall assembly, this seems to be plastic, and of course plastic deteriorates over time, so that's a little bit scary idea to have the brake pedal and everything mounted in the plastic thing, but yeah, I guess that's okay, at least for some time. Anyways, this seems to be missing the spring for the clutch pedal, but I don't care about that. It probably just makes the clutch pedal feel much worse, well, easier to drive anyway. And it's also missing the sensor for the clutch pedal. These newer cars don't have that kind of tactile switch anywhere here. They have the Hall sensor here. It was missing, but I got one from friend. It should come right about here. But I will put this here lastly because that this might break. Luckily this came with all the lines and so on, so I don't need to buy these separately. These were like 12 euros or 15 euros something, so really cheap. And this was the clutch line that I had. It's a little bit mangled, I don't know how it goes, and it's actually missing plastic thing here. So I bought another one because these are ridiculous 70 euros and then another 70 euros for the rubber line, so hugely expensive. I don't want to buy this new. These are like 10 euros used, so here cheap one. I bought another one. This has the plastic thing in here that was missing. Of course it's missing this O-ring, but I hopefully can find something. But it's completely different length, as you can see. I don't know why. And also this thing is totally different, and yeah, there's quick fitting, and of course there's quick fitting here, but it's totally different. I don't know, is this another one from right-hand drive car or something? I really don't know. These were both marketed at left-hand drive, but I don't know, maybe different year model or something. Let's see what fits. This is a bit annoying that these have these quick fittings because I cannot make these. But let's see. Let's take the old pedals off and try to mount these and see what we will use. I think we can make this work. It's totally impossible to try to film when working down here. But anyways, now I got all these plastics away and now I can get access for the brake pedal assembly. You can see it there. There's basically only 3 bolts, that one and that one on the top. And then the connector and the pin for the brake pedal. So I think I will just remove this whole assembly here and replace with the new one and transfer what I need to transfer here.
Six and a half hours later.
Okay, sorry, I didn't take any video of the pedal swap because A, this is almost impossible place to film any video. And B, this job sucks really badly. Swapping the pedal setup up there was really easy to do. It was really just 5-minute job to swap out that whole thing. But the line from the clutch master. In these E60 cars it seems to go down there, under the feet, and then raises back up and goes through the other side at the top of the trans tunnel. And no kidding, I spent like 5 hours getting that installed. First of all, it's difficult to install because the carpet is in the way. And you really can't get the carpet away without lifting the whole thing of the car. And because the footrest is glued down to the carpet, you can't just bend this out of the way. So I needed to take quite much stuff off, including the gas pedal and everything, to be able to bend the carpet enough to put in the clutch line. And of course the first line was the wrong one. And the rubber pass-through grommet was also super difficult to get in. I should have put that in before the transmission was in to make that easier. So yeah, I spent like 5 hours with this. But it is in now. And yeah, after that everything starts to be done. While working on this stuff, I did also replace the engine mounts, because those were gone and making some sounds. And I did also replace the oil pan gasket, because it was leaking so bad that I had to be topping off the oil. And it was pretty crusty indeed. While doing that, I also cleaned the oil pan. And talking about the leaks, the oil filter housing was leaking too, so I had to change the gasket on that too. And the water pump was also leaking, so I had to replace that too. And then also almost every coolant hose was leaking, so I had to put new hoses too. But after those fixes, only thing to do was the wiring for the manual swap. So yeah, the wiring stuff. First we need to connect the reverse light switch to get the reverse lights to work, because normally that info comes through CAN bus from the automatic transmission. And we can see that connection here. So this is the switch that's on the side of the transmission. First pin goes to the ground, and then the second pin goes to the light module. Connector X12, pin 13. So we need to add that. Here we can see the route better, and it basically goes through connector X6011 here, and so on to the light module. Of course, running one wire through the car is pretty annoying, but we can take advantage of the wires for the automatic transmission. If we take a look at the next paper, we can see how. Here is the connector for the automatic transmission, the one that we saw under the car. And here we already have a ground, so we can use the ground from this pin for example. But for the other one, we can see that there's a wire at pin 10 that goes to the car access system, which we don't need anymore. And this car access system, the CAS, is very close to the light module, basically side by side. So I did move this wire from CAS to the light module, and I did put the connector to these two wires. So that's pretty much what the reverse lights needs. Only problem was that the CAS uses different pins than the light module. So I had to change the pin for different one. But that's all. Then other job is the clutch switch. Or it's not a switch but Hall sensor. And we need to wire that in. It needs ground that is here. Then the fourth pin is only used for the SMG transmission, so it's not needed. So we are only left with the two. Pin 3 goes to the CAS. In my understanding, this is 5 volts operating voltage, at least based on the symbol here. So this wire needs to run from the CAS unit to the clutch pedal, which is easy because all of these are close to each other. But then this last one is difficult one, because we need to run one wire from the clutch switch to ECU, this one here, which would be quite a task to run. But if we check out this paper again, we can see that there's wires running between the transmission and the shifter, and here's again the connector that is close to the ECU. So I moved one of these wires to the ECU, and then extended one of these wires that go to the shifter to the clutch pedal. I think it was this one that I extended to the pedal. So in that way I got the clutch pedal info to the ECU. And this needed very little extra wires to add. Of course after this we need to do a little bit of coding to make this work. So what you need to do coding wise is to open NCS Expert, extract the FA list from for example a CAS unit, delete the option 205 which is the automatic transmission, and then write the FA list back to the car. Then you just write an empty man file to all of the needed modules like CAS, DSC, instrument cluster and so on, which codes the modules to match the FA list, and that's it. There's better videos showing the whole thing in detail, so I will just link one of those videos in description. Then lastly, we just reset the learned variants on the ECU, so that the ECU also learns that there's no auto transmission anymore in the car. And we are done. And there it is already. Or well, it has been ready because I have already driven it for a few thousand kilometers in few months, and it has worked great. No problem so far. I didn't take any driving video because this is now just basically stock manual E61. You can see the shifter there. Nothing special there, and it has working as it should. Or well, one thing is that this has the short ratio diff from auto, which is 3.73. That sounds quite short, but now that I have driven this, it's actually pretty great. The RPMs are around 2500 when driving 100 km in hour, which is kinda a lot, but this has stock exhaust, so I don't really hear that. And now that this has the short diff and manual, this feels surprisingly fast. Almost like this has gained like 100 horsepower from getting rid of the 6 HP. Because even when the 6 HP worked previously, it wasn't working great, which is kinda normal state for 6 HP. So now with manual, this is significantly better to drive. I haven't been annoyed by this car now that it's manual. So I can highly recommend manual swapping the 6 HP or do 8 HP swap. But that's all for this video. Next one should be a lot more interesting. Hopefully I can get it done quickly after this one. But yeah, I promise that the next video will be a lot more interesting than this one.